Good morning, Geauga County, Lake County, northeastern Ohio, and for everybody listening from Trumbull and Mahoning Valley this morning. And you'll be listening on our live streams because I don't think you can pick up the radio. Our radio is on 101.5, and I got to kick on the screen here 101.5 and 1330 a.m. And if you want to call into the radio program, you can do so at 440-946-9468. You can email us at voiceofjaga@gmail.com. And as always, we are streaming live stream to Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube. If you want to engage us there, you can come and put a chat into the chat windows in one of those social medias, Rumble, Facebook, or YouTube, and we will answer those questions or look at those questions and prompt our guest with those. This morning, I have Jonathan Broadbent with me as always. Good morning,
Good morning,
Jonathan.
everyone.
And then we have Judge Engler. Judge David L. Engler is running for what district is that?
The 11th.
11th District, Appeals Court District. And,
Right.
um, and,
Morning.
and we'll let David Engler, Judge Engler, tell us what all that includes because it includes multiple counties. But he's got an extensive background. I went to his campaign fundraiser last weekend, well attended, a lot of people there, a lot of prominent people there from the Mahoning and Trumbull County areas and some other areas around. But Geauga County was represented. We had the owner of Iron Horse Canoe Livery down on 422, and I was representing Geauga County. I'm not sure who else was there from Geauga County, but I was there and supporting Mr. Judge Engler. And so, Jonathan, he's got an extensive background. I don't know how much you know about it. And
It does.
he announced something really, really important, which I don't want to steal his thunder. I'm gonna let him tell us about that this morning. Something he's gonna
Yeah,
do
don't steal
legally.
thunder.
So anyway, good morning, Jonathan.
Yeah, good morning, Skip. I'm not going to talk long. I'm going to turn this over to Judge Engler. And remember, ask your questions. You can call in 440-946-9468 or join us online, Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube, and post your questions. We'll do our best to get your questions answered. Let's begin at the beginning. Judge Engler, tell us about your run for District Court of Appeals. I think as a good starting point, and I do want to get into your bio and background. Help people understand the role and significance of the 11th District Court of Appeals.
Oh, sure. And good morning. Thank you for having me on your wonderful program today. The significance of the 11th District Court of Appeals. First off, it's the corner of Northeast Ohio. The southern point is Trumbull County, where I'm a common pleas court judge at currently, and then to the north is Ashtabula. Then heading west, you have Lake County, and then below Lake County, the most beautiful county in Ohio, Geauga County, is right there. And then you come down from Geauga, you have Portage County. So it's those five counties, which comprises of approximately 900,000 people, is the 11th District Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals in Ohio, much like most of the states, it's typically the court of last resort because it's difficult to get to the Supreme Court. Court of Appeals is an automatic right to an appeal when you get to the Court of Appeal, whether you're coming from a court of common pleas or you're coming from a municipal court appeal. It'll go to the Court of Appeal as a right, but the Supreme Court has to approve taking up your case. So on all cases, the criminal cases go up to the Supreme Court. But the courts of appeals are the ones that make the law by and large throughout the state of Ohio. And certainly the 11th District Court of Appeals is going to make the law, the case law, that affects all of Geauga County and Lake County and Portage, Ashtabula, and Trumbull. But with the decisions, and this is the key part, with the decisions that come out of the 11th District, you can affect the law throughout the entire state. And that's why, my supporters and friends and myself, we believe that it's a good idea to have a solid, conservative mindset on that court. And I would be replacing Judge Matt Lynch, who is aged out. The Geauga resident, the longtime Geauga resident, Matt Lynch, is aged out because in Ohio, and this is something people don't know when I'm talking to them, at the dozens of pancakes I've eaten my way through Geauga County on during this campaign, it is that when you cannot start an additional term if you have turned age 70. So if you're beyond 70 when your term is to begin, you're aged out. You're considered washed up, done with in the Ohio judicial system. So Matt's gone at the end of his term in February 8th of 2027. So that was one of the reasons why I'm running, is because Matt Lynch's seat is up, and Matt Lynch was so gracious as to suggest I'd be a good fit for this spot.
Well, that's interesting. You and I have spoken a few times over the phone, and I'll say I tried to do my very best with my sort of ancillary, outside, limited knowledge of the practice of law and the importance, understanding, recognizing the importance of having good judges. We did delve quite a bit into the importance of both the federal and state constitution and how those apply to passing of laws, etc. I enjoyed the conversations and a lot of those answers. Drilling down a little bit on Matt Lynch, who is aging out, as you say, he has encouraged you directly to run. Do you have an endorsement, his endorsement, or others to share with us?
You cannot have an endorsement from a judge cannot endorse someone running for office. So no, that's an impossibility. We are prohibited from endorsing other judges or endorsing other political candidates. We have to remain nonpartisan in that sense.
Okay, well that makes sense. And that's something I don't actually know the answer to. If you have, I know that you've been traveling quite a bit and speaking in various different places. Tell us about the support that you're receiving in communities.
Well, I have tremendous support. Just this last week, and Skip Claypool mentioned it, and I was so happy to have him present at we had a really remarkably strong event in Trumbull County at the Avalon Grand Resort, which is the number one resort in all of Ohio. A former client of mine in private practice is the Avalon Grand Resort. And at that event, the Conneaut FOP president, Wade Stitt, easily one of the most influential FOP leaders in that 11th district, endorsed my efforts to run for 11th District Court of Appeals. Also, I had received the support of our sheriff, Mike Wilson, because of my strong, safe at home, security, law enforcement. You got to keep the bad guys away from us type of approach to law and justice. I was glad to get the support from law enforcement. I also received the support from a group called the Conservative Patriot League, which is a long-time, very conservative group of activists in Northeast Ohio. And importantly to me, very important to me, the Right to Life Action Coalition in Ohio recently endorsed me, and that was huge to get their endorsement. And for very particular reasons, I received their endorsement. I'd like to talk to the both of you about that tonight, because it weaves its way into my entire judicial philosophy and what it means to be a conservative, and why we need to make sure we understand who the judges are we're putting on the bench, and what they believe. And there's a tie into Geauga County and all of that too, which is interesting. Judge Grindell, your juvenile court judge in Geauga.
Yeah.
Right. Which by the way, Judge Grindell, he was the subject of a lawsuit from the Supreme Court that had disciplined him. But in the course of that lawsuit, Justice Pat DeWine in his lawsuit said, because he was getting in trouble. Judge Grindel, the disciplinary counsel, said he shouldn't have attended a meeting where his wife, I think, was on the state legislature, and he was giving testimony about a pending bill, and the Supreme Court ends up saying, no, just because you put on a black robe, and this is the important thing, just because you put on a black robe does not cause you to lose your First Amendment rights to speech. I've taken an opportunity to utilize that statement from Justice Pat DeWine and say, I'm not going to lose my right to free speech, so I could let people know where I'm coming from as a judge.
That is tremendously refreshing. I was just thinking that. I've thought that a few times as I've spoken with you over the phone, and now with the pleasure of having you on Voice of Geauga. To me, it's refreshing. I can thankfully say that I don't engage in many conversations with judges, but from the few that I have, and watching TV and reading posts online and those sorts of things, it's refreshing to hear you state your positions on things just so candidly. I'm really enjoying that. Again, we're coming up on a break. This is a reminder, if you have questions or comments, if you'd like to pose questions of Judge David Engler and his campaign for the Ohio's 11th District Court of Appeals, post them online or call in 440-946-9468. Keep in mind, you can, of course, email voiceofgeauga@gmail.com. We have a trivia question. We're going to work again to give away that beautiful gift basket for Village Viking Fest, which is coming up. That launches May 1st. When we come back from this break, we are going to pose the trivia question, and the first person to answer, either online or calling in, the first person we see is going to win that tremendous gift basket. We're going to come back with more on the other side of this break.
Mics are off. Mics are off.
All right. So this actually enters the podcast side. We are still live on the podcast. So anybody hearing us now is on one of three: Rumble, Facebook, or YouTube. So we can engage in some kind of behind the scenes conversation with them. They're getting a glimpse into what happens during commercial breaks on the radio show Voice of Geauga. So we have some comments here. A lot of people saying good morning, Dorothy. It looks like we've got a lot of our usual guests joining in, mostly on Rumble. But as Skip has pointed out a few times, our Facebook audience has been growing and getting more engaged. Judge Engler, when we come back from break, is there anything you want to make sure that we cover during today's conversation?
Well, I want to definitely make sure we cover the issues of why parents, or how parents lost their right to be a parent in the state of Ohio, and how important that is, and why, as you know, I believe it's like, I've done so much different types of law over the course of my 40 years as practicing lawyer, that I often wondered, like, why didn't I specialize in something and just make a load of money and go away? But it might be because I was like heading for this spot where at the Court of Appeals, I've had a broader experience than any other judge possibly could have. But this one issue that's coming up about the parental rights, I think is definitely might be the reason I'm in this race, is to bring this to the
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Yeah, beautiful. That ties right in with my role at Protect Ohio Children.
Oh my goodness! Oh, it's amazing, Jonathan. And my conversation about the Mirabelli case out of California that went to Supreme Court on March 2nd, that's I love talking about that issue. And
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
I'm the plaintiff.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool, myself, Jonathan Broadbent, and we have first-time guest Judge David Engler, who is running for Ohio's 11th District Court of Appeals. A very important hot-button topic came up, and during the break, Judge Engler made the comment perhaps I'm here in this position, in this role, running for this race in this position at this time for one key critical role, and that has to do with parental rights. Parental rights all over the U.S. are under attack, and Judge Engler was referencing a California case. Before I flip it over, and I do want to spend some time there talking about the state of parental rights in Ohio, I want to point out that there was a case that caught my attention in Sweden of a family that is losing their child. It's actually being taken away from Sweden's equivalent of child protective services because apparently they attend church too much. I'll find that and post it on Voice of Geauga. That's an extreme example, but these are the kinds of things that worry people, and they should. Judge Engler, tell us more about parental rights and where we stand in Ohio.
Well, yeah, it's an important issue. I mean, we should be storming the gates because of this issue as parents. And I came about it. My entire career as a lawyer, I've had cases where I've gone after government organizations, children's services organizations. There's a terrible case going up in Ashtabula County right now where a citizen is trying to save the life of a little girl and is being thwarted by their own children's services. We'll talk about that later, but there was one particular case where I went after children's services because they allowed a pedophile father and the mother who had, you know, borderline mental retardation, to be in the visitation room, and they actually molested the infant on camera, and then were attempting to sell those images, those pornographic images of child abuse to others. And I had to jump in there and fight like mad on behalf of the grandmother who turned her own daughter in, who was the daughter with the pedophile, and CSB knew there was a pedophile. But you can't imagine how hard they fought against me as an attorney when I was fighting for this little infant who had been sexually abused. And I've represented girls that have been abused in group homes. I represented this little boy that was murdered down in Mahoning County years ago, Teddy Foltz. Kids across the state of Ohio fighting for children who have been abused, and the government organizations who were designed to protect those kids just failed in their job, absolutely miserably failed. And they always had this haughty, arrogant perspective that they knew better than what parents could for their kids. But the particular issue that's in play right now is if you're juvenile court judge of Trumbull County, because I'm the juvenile court judge, I have standing to bring litigation to the Ohio Supreme Court to say to the Supreme Court, hey, look, in that constitutional amendment that was passed in 2023, you stripped away my power as a juvenile court judge to do something called judicial bypass, which in the past, all juvenile court judges in Ohio, if a minor did not want their parents' consent, they would have to come before a juvenile court judge with their advocate, with someone from Planned Parenthood or whoever, and they would come to the judge and give some explanation or reason. The court would appoint a guardian, and then the court would make a determination as to whether that minor needed their parents' consent or not. Well, with that 23 amendment, Article 1, Section 22 of the Ohio Constitution, it stripped away the need for me as a juvenile court judge and all the other juvenile court judges in Ohio, stripped away our ability to hear those cases because it absolutely got rid of parents' consent, a parent right to make that medical determination for their minor daughter. And it's shocking that that's what happened. So my lawsuit that I'm going to be filing, hopefully with the help of some incredible attorneys, the same ones that were working on the Mirabelli case that was overturned in the Supreme Court, reached out to me, is I'll be suing, bringing a declaratory public. Right now, they're not being honest. And I think that's a miscarriage of justice. I think that's a miscarriage of justice. It's awful. It's awful. It's an attack.
Question from Darafy. Thank you for the question, Darafy. Judge Darafy asks of you, where does the judge stand on food freedom, the right to buy and sell food without government being involved? The case of Amos Miller in PA is an example. So, have you given a lot of thought? Have you had involvement with food freedom?
Before me as a Court of Appeals judge, we are still limited in what we could say. And I always tell people this: whatever the case might be, I'm going to be guided by the Constitution and the laws and the facts of the case before me. Regardless of my own personal beliefs, I'm going to be guided by the law, and particularly the Constitution of the state and of this country.
So,
I
Judge,
don't know enough about food freedom.
Judge, let me jump in here. I want to ask you a quick question on that topic. The probate court, the reason you can do this is because the probate court, or juvenile court, sorry, is positioned to be able to do that. You have standing, what's referred to as standing, which means you have the right to sue. I don't really get the whole idea of standing oftentimes, but so I'm just so impressed that you came up with this, since you're in the business of protecting juveniles in the courts. Is there a possibility that other juvenile courts across the state of Ohio can join with you in this?
Absolutely, and any juvenile court judge will be able to join with me in this effort.
And I would think that any juvenile court judge would be dying to do this. Not dying, but would be excited to do this. And so, because this is so important for both parental rights and the protection of the kids. And so I'm going to reach out to all the juvenile court judges that can hear this message, both in Lake County, Geauga County, Geauga County, Ashtabula County, and anybody else that might want to tune in and join with the judge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that issue of legal standing, just as a matter of legal education, is very critical. Is because when you have a lawsuit, you have to have. Well, are you actually injured? That becomes the sort of the baseline question. What is your ability, Judge Engler, to be involved in this lawsuit? My ability to be involved in this lawsuit, this declaratory judgment action, is because Article 4 of the Ohio Constitution gives me certain rights as a juvenile court judge. Those rights were affected by the Article 1, Section 22 amendment of 2023. So when my rights were affected, they weren't taken away explicitly in that amendment. So my rights were taken away, they were affected, yet they're still there. So there's a conflict in the Ohio Constitution. And when there's a conflict, then that gives me the ability to come forward to the state Supreme Court and say, hey, state Supreme Court, can you resolve this conflict? Because I still see that my rights are on the books. But
unfortunately, Judge, I need to step in. We're coming up on a break. Remember, you can join the conversation online or dialing in 440-946-9468. We're going to come back on the other side of the break with more from Judge David Engler.
Mics are off. Mics are off.
Okay. So we are continuing the conversation on social media. During the break, we can drill down a little bit. There are a couple of things that I want to see if we can bring into the conversation. The last I was aware of state level statistics, Ohio, I think, was number 4 in child trafficking, which is a horrible statistic. I don't know if that still holds true. I believe it was true about 5 or so years ago, but we are certainly up there just because of where we are as a halfway point between New York and Chicago. And to get into child endangerment, Ohio unfortunately ranks high up there. Is that your experience also, Judge?
Sure, absolutely. Same thing with the abortion issue. Ohio is now the number 5 place in the country for abortions. 25,000 abortions were performed last year. Half of all those abortions are now medical abortions using medicine, right? And then half of those, it's an interesting statistic, half of all abortions are African American abortions.